All right, everybody, welcome back. 2013 GMC Acadia transmission's got to come out. First thing we got to do is start by taking these plastics off, take this air box off, unplug that, take the tube off, and it'll open up a whole bunch of stuff inside of there. Now that we got all that out of there, we can see everything's opened up pretty good. So we're going to take this off right here, which is that 110 millimeter right there, and it's just a cover that comes off. Get out of your way. And then cooler line, and then shifter cable, bolt there, and it just pops off of there. And then there's one more cooler line nut right there. Now I just take the nuts off and I leave the lines on there so they don't leak all over me when I'm doing stuff on the bottom. And then there's 3 bell housing bolts up here. One right there, one underneath right here, and then one right there. What you're gonna do is take those 3 bell housing bolts out, and then we'll go to the bottom. All right, so the next thing is just this 13 nut and that 13 nut back there. And then the 3 15s. You can see now, that one under there, the one right there, and the one right there. All right, so when that stuff's out of there, you got your torque converter bolts out, 3 of them up here. Everything else is loose. We're gonna raise it up, take tires off, and start the bottom stuff. All right, after you get the tires off, next thing I do is take the axle nuts off. This is a 33 millimeter. All right, so before I raise it all the way up, after you take those nuts off, I'm gonna go ahead and take these ball joint nuts off right here. And I'm going to turn this whole thing. Let's see if I get it. I'm gonna turn that like that. All right, then I'm gonna take this 21 millimeter ratchet wrench, and you can get right on here. There's enough room to fit. Okay, but then once you get that nut up far enough, you won't be able to get this off if you do this before you take the axle nut off. With the axle nut off, you can push this in, and that gives you all the room you need here to ratchet that all the way off with the ratchet wrench. After you got those off and these off, I just take the nut off and I just leave this here until later, because this whole subframe has to come down, and it all comes down with the control arms and everything. So the next thing we're going to do is take these clips off here and on the other side, and then we're going to take this shield off right here with the 415s, and then we're going to take the exhaust off and take this drive shaft loose. So after you make sure you get the O2 sensors unplugged, then you got 2 15s back here, you got 2 13s right here, and you got 2 13s up here in the front. All right, after you get the drive shaft off, now you're gonna take this heat shield off right here, and then there's a heat shield up here on the top. You can see it right there, this heat shield. So there's, if I can see it, oh, you can see it. There's a 10 millimeter right here, and there's one more right here on top. You can see it right there. Take those 2 heat shields off. Also, there's a 10 millimeter in this bracket, there's a 10 millimeter in this bracket, and there's a 10 millimeter right here to take this line loose from the subframe. Also, motor mount nuts. One here, one here. Take those 2 motor mount nuts off, and a third one here take all 3 of those 18s off. So after you got all the nuts off, and you got the exhaust off, and you got the heat shields off, here, heat shield on the top off, next thing we're gonna do is take rack bolts out. These 2 big rack bolts here, and then if you look through this hole, you can see 2, one here and one here. One's here, and one comes down from the top, 18 millimeter. Okay, another thing I do, I've already done it on this one, so I didn't do it, but before I take this rack loose, I always mark this to where it is in relation with this. So you can see I got a mark right there and right there with a punch or a chisel, and it made a mark there that can't be erased. So when I put this back together, this rack can go here or here and tighten down, which will make your steering wheel crooked. So I mark this. Then when I go back together, I'll line the marks back up. All right, and another thing we got to do up here is take this pump off, 10 millimeter, 10 millimeter. Then right down here, that heat shield right there has to come off for 3 10s. There's one right there, there's one right here, and there's one on the other side. You unplug this O2 sensor and you take that heat shield off. And there's 3 15s. Take those off because that catalytic converter has to come off to be able to get the starter off, to be able to get the torque converter bolts out. Also, this plastic shield, and then we will hang the motor before we take the subframe out of the bottom. All right, now you can see down in here we got the 3 15 millimeter nuts. 1, 2, 3. Take those off, and then there's a bracket on the bottom that holds it so it won't fall out. Okay, so the next thing after you get those 3 15s off is we're gonna come over here and we're gonna hang this motor, because when I take the subframe out of the bottom, there's nothing to be holding it in. So we got to keep it hanging in here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this 15 millimeter off right here that holds this bracket, and there's an identical one right here. You can see maybe right here. There's a 15. 2 of those, take them out. That's where I hook my chain. It gives you a hook right here, and then I can put my pick on it to hold it up. All right, so I'm gonna take my chain. I'm gonna use the same bolts to go back in. Okay, so now you can see it's sitting on the fenders, and I got some wood under there to kind of keep it supported. And this thing has all the weight off of the subframe. So now we're going to go to the bottom, take the rest of that off. Next thing we're going to do is take these sway bar link bolts nuts off too, and take the sway bar links loose. All right, so after you get these out, sway bar links sway bar links come out. Next thing is this whole thing is ready to come out of here. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take these 15s out and these two 15s out. These two, these two. Then the main four. 1, 2, 3, 4 on each corner. Before you do any of that, you want to support it. So that's what we're going to do now. All right, so right before you start to take this down, you can see that it kind of overlaps this a little bit. So you got to come down and back and down and back and down and kind of work it out of there. So now that you have that down just a little bit, now is when I go ahead and take out the ball joints, because there's no, I mean, they'll just come out. So you smack it with a hammer a couple times, they'll pop out and it'll come down with the subframe. All right, so that is the whole subframe out of the car. And so now you can see all of this is all opened up. And so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get this transfer case off, which is 3 18s up in there and 2 right here. Also, now we can take the axles out. But before we do that, I'm going to drain it, because if you take this axle out and don't drain it, it'll leak fluid everywhere. So this is a drain. I'm going to drain it, take the axles out. So after you pop that axle out, this side's a little more complicated. You have to take this bracket off. So it's 13, 13, 13, and there's another little one on top. Those two. Before you do that, you got to take that bolt. There's 3 of them. See, there's another one right there. 1, 2, and there's a third one up here. You take those 3 bolts out, then this bracket will come off of the axle itself. Oh, that's one way to do it. Just drop it on the floor. All right, after you get that whole mount off of there, you can see it opens up a lot. And now we got to take this unit off. So that's going to be those 3 18s right there and 2 right here. And I'm going to take a strap and raise this up and tie it around the exhaust so it's not hanging on it when I go to take that out. All right, after you pull that thing off of there, you see it's wide open. This is the last bolt I ever take out before I take the transmission down. Take this 15mm out right here, and then this whole catalytic converter will drop out. After you do that, then we can get the starter off. So after you get that out of there, you can see there's the starter. So 15mm, 15mm, and then most of the time I got to unplug that knock sensor. Sometimes I got to take knock sensor off, or at least loosen it so you can spin it out of the way. But I'll unplug it. You pull this starter back out of the way and just tuck it over here. And you can see now the starter poked up out of the way over there. You can get up in here and you can turn this around by a ratchet on the crankshaft. And then you get up in this hole right here and you turn these around to the hole. One by one, take the bolts out. So now after you have all 4 bolts out of there, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to let this down a little bit from the top, let this down a little bit, and then this mount needs to come off the side. So this mount comes off. You can see when I let it down, but you take this off, then you take this mount off, and then we'll put a jack under this, and we'll take the rest of the bell housing bolts out, and it'll come right out of the bottom. Okay, now that you can see I let this down, you can get to that nut on the top, 18 millimeter, and then 3 18 millimeters to take this off. Okay, so before I let it down, I'm going to take off this electrical connector. And right here, I'm going to take off a bracket that bolts on with a 10 millimeter nut. That's one of the cooler line brackets. And I'm going to reach up and just pop those cooler lines off. And there we come. All right, everybody, there it is. Another Acadia transmission, all-wheel drive, out. Thanks for watching. Hope I could help. And I will see you on the next one.